Okay, just call everybody to order. Sorry, Jeff, you are going to be eating your sandwich on camera, I'm afraid. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this, what will be a very short public meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board, and I will explain why that's the case a bit later. But you're very welcome to join us, and we do have some public statements and public questions. My name is Councillor Tony Dyer, and I am the Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board. Councillor Mark Bradshaw is the Vice Chair of the Overview Scrutiny Management Board. Unfortunately, he's had to send his apologies for today. I'll quickly go around, because we've started a new municipal year, and because Councillor Gollop has eaten a sandwich, I'm going to go around and allow everybody to introduce themselves. But I will start with Andrew as one of our new members.
Councillor Andrew Brown, newly on Awesome for this year.
Councillor Martin Fodor, I'm Chair of the Communities Scrutiny Commission.
Councillor Brenda Massey, and I'm not new on this board.
Councillor David Wilcox, Chair of Growth and Regeneration Scrutiny Commission.
Councillor Steve Smith, I am new on this and Chair of the Health Scrutiny Subcommittee.
I'm Councillor Jeff Gollop and I'm Chair of the Resources Scrutiny Commission.
Stephen.
Yep, Stephen Peacock, Chief Executive.
Lucy.
Hello, Lucy Fleming, Head of Democratic Engagement.
Thank you, everybody. First of all, safety information. We're not expecting a fire drill, but if there is a fire drill, then please proceed calmly out through the main doors, turn to the right down the ramp, and assemble outside the west end of Worcester Cathedral. But as I said, we're not expecting anything to happen. Agenda item number 2 is apologies for absence. I have apologies for absence, Lucy?
No additional ones, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item number 3 is declarations of interest. Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 4 is chair's business. I have no chair's business for today, which moves us on to agenda item number 5, which is public forum. We have 2 questions in public forum and 5 statements. I'll go through the questions first of all, and first on the list is Suzanne Audrey. Suzanne, have you had the opportunity to see your question or answer? Okay, I'll read it out for you. Give me a moment, I have to find it again.
Okay, so I'm reading out the answer here. So members participating in a work where they will agree the scrutiny work programme for 23-24. The 6th of June public meeting of OSM will ratify the outcome of the workshop. The setting of the work programme is scrutiny member-led, with each commission identifying their areas of priority focus for the year ahead. The Council's executive directors will be participating in the workshop and will assist members in the process of setting priorities, informed by their detailed knowledge of key areas of service and policy activities planned for the year ahead. The Mayor's Forward Plan is updated and published each month. OSM will keep the content of the Forward Plan under ongoing review and will retain the flexibility to adjust the scrutiny work programme as necessary, as key decision items are added to the Mayor's Forward Plan as the year progresses. It is recognised that to an extent the Council is faced on an ongoing basis with adapting to national, political, economic and other circumstances, which will be reflected through the content of the Forward Plan as the year progresses.
And obviously you get a printed version of that as well. Suzanne, do you have any follow-up questions?
Sorry, is it working? Oh. I've been in a meeting this morning, so I hadn't had time to see that. I don't have a smartphone. Is it working? Yeah. But I've been looking for the Mayor's forward plan. I can't see it. So it doesn't seem to be, unless it's been put on the website this morning. But by then, it often just seems to say what's going to be rubber stamped at Cabinet. So I didn't know whether there's any way that the forward plan can be a bit more of a forward plan, as in that people could see it a bit more in advance. And I don't know if any of the, because I feel it's disrespectful, but perhaps I'm overreacting when I needn't. But I don't know how Scrutiny feel about whether they are actually getting enough information about these major decisions that are being made.
I think the best how I can answer that is I think there's been a general consensus amongst Scrutiny from all parties is that we would prefer to have a much wider range and much more forward-looking list of items on the forward plan, and there were some improvements that have been made on that more. At the moment, we have reached that situation where again on a forward plan at the moment that are very subject to external influences, and as a result, I think the Mayor's office don't feel that they should put them on until they're more certain about when they're going to be available to come for decision making and for us to scrutiny.
It's very understanding of you, Councillor Dyer. Yeah. Thank you.
We also have a question from Nicola Round. Is Nicola here? Do you want to read out the response?
Okay, the officer response to this one. We are currently continuing our initial evaluation of the Council's advertising and sponsorship policy in partnership with the University of Bristol. Once this is complete, when our internal resourcing levels allow, we plan to review and refresh the policy. At this point, we will consider any further restrictions, including the potential for those suggested relating to low carbon.
Do you have any follow-up questions, Nicola? Nicola, can you come up to the microphone?
Yeah, I suppose simply it would be really good to know when that might happen. What's the timescale? Because obviously the climate emergency is pretty urgent, and the faster these things can move on, the faster we can start to address Bristol's responsibilities to addressing the climate emergency.
Okay, thank you, Nicola. As you can imagine, I'm not in a position to be able to answer that, but I will forward that question on to the relevant officers and ask them to come back. Thank you. We'll now move on to public statements, and first public statement is Councillor Caladenia.
Thank you. Hopefully you read my statement in advance because hopefully you took it into account in the scrutiny planning workshop that you had this morning. But to just give the very much headlines of it in case you didn't, it's on the same subject as the previous public question. It's about the Council's advertising and sponsorship policy, which when it was adopted and it came through OSM with heavy and helpful input from OSM just over 2 years ago, the eventual decision was to strengthen it a lot from the draft and to include prohibitions for a lot of harmful kinds of advertising, but at that stage not to include advertising for high carbon products and services, not ruling out the principle, but holding back from it at this stage on the basis that there were no nationally agreed standards or no local authority precedent. That has changed since the policy was adopted. There's details and links in my statement if you want to go and have a look, but basically a legal opinion has shown that it's within Council's legal powers, so you're not likely to be successfully legally challenged, and several other councils have now adopted controls on high carbon advertising. So as Nicola says, there's a climate emergency. We can't really afford to wait years before taking action, so I would ask Scrutiny to put this on the agenda for this year to look at how it can be updated.
Okay, thank you. I next have on my name, on my list, Veronica Rignall.
Hello. Yeah, as the previous question and statement, my statement relates to the same topic, to my personal view, although, as I've written in my statement, I am also a member of Adblock Bristol. As has been said, the climate emergency is extremely pressing, and as I've noted in my statement, I've been really proud to live in Bristol and to see our approach to the climate emergency, but I also feel that it's moving far too slowly. And one thing that I feel presses on me a lot as a member of Adblock, but in the first place it was one of the reasons I joined Adblock, is that it is extremely contradictory to be hearing one thing about the climate emergency and the behaviour change we all need to make, and quite another to be seeing constant adverts for flights, for cars, for SUVs, for red meat and things we know have to be phased out to limit the effects of climate breakdown, which is affecting us and communities across the world. So I'd like the scrutiny committees to think how this can be part of the Council's climate action plan, and to make sure that that is happening, that considering low carbon advertising policy does progress this year on that timescale, and also that there's much greater scrutiny, or that the Council is being held to account on its climate action strategy in general. And that's so important to me and so many people I know that can't be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is on behalf of Adblock Bristol.
Afternoon, I'm Henry. I'm going to be speaking on behalf of Adblock Bristol. I'll try my best to summarise quickly what we've written in the statement we'd already sent in. I'll be speaking in sort of the person of Adblock Bristol. So Adblock Bristol asks that the OSMB makes Bristol City Council's commitments to reducing emissions and encouraging sustainable behaviour change as laid out in the One City Climate Strategy a priority for scrutiny committees this year. The OSMB had previously provided pre-decision scrutiny on Bristol City Council's advertising and sponsorship policy a few years ago, helping to shape it into a more robust policy that includes prohibition on advertising of junk food, alcohol, gambling and payday loans on all council-owned advertising sites. At the time, the council stopped short of including restrictions on high-carbon advertising on the basis that at the time there was a lack of national standards or local authority precedents. And slightly mirroring what Councillor Denyer had said, there have been precedents. Restricting high-carbon advertising at the local level has been found by legal examination to not only be lawful, as also pointed out by Councillor Denyer, but proportionate and necessary given the scale of the climate crisis. Councils have broad scope to define a policy according to their discretion. Other councils, such as Cambridgeshire County Council, Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council, and Coventry City Council, have already adopted policies restricting advertising for fossil fuels and other environmentally damaging goods and services. The UK pardon me, it's the first time I've spoken here, so I'm stumbling a bit. The UK Ad Agency Purpose Disruptors has calculated that 32% of the average carbon footprint of UK residents in 2022 was due to ads causing extra consumption, particularly of high-carbon goods such as cars and flights. Research by the Badvertising Campaign has shown that SUV ads can make people 250% more likely to own an SUV than no vehicle at all. So I, and on behalf of Adblock, think that it's time the Council reviews the policy, and we ask the Board that it commits to prioritising greater climate ambition through the Council scrutiny processes, and places the introduction of a low-carbon advertising policy on the agenda for scrutiny committees this year as a pathway to meet the Council's climate commitments.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you very much.
We do have a statement from Dave Wedgwell. Unfortunately, Dave's not with us, so I'll move. As with all these statements, Oz and members would have seen them, and we will read them, and we will look to address the points raised in the statements. So I'll move on to the final statement, which is by Councillor Katie Grant. Katie.
Hi everybody, I am Councillor Katie Grant. I'm here in my capacity as chair of the Climate Change Working Group, even though I'm speaking in a public forum. I'm here in this way because hopefully you'll have seen my statement to this effect. The report that has been generated by the Climate Change Working Group, which is a relatively new sort of subgroup created by OSM about 6-8 months ago, That main report with its content and recommendations will come to OSM to be looked at formally in the July session. But because today is the agenda setting moment for the group and for the remains of the year, I'm here to ask that OSM committee consider the extension of the mandate of the Climate Change Working Group, which we have asked for as one of the key recommendations in the report for a further 6 months. We really recognise the significant considerable effort that the Council and its partners are making in the city right now across a range of projects and programmes aimed to accelerate the journey towards net zero. But we have by no means looked at all areas of the Council's operation and policy, and we'd like to keep the pressure on this enormously important topic, even whilst acknowledging that there are many demands on council officer time between now and the May 24 election. So we'd like to do that. We'd like to examine some of the other areas. We'd like to make this a bit easier for officers by bringing in external expertise where we can. But this was a majority recommendation, so I'm asking for it now. One such area might indeed be, policy around high carbon advertising. So that's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And that concludes public forum. Thank you all for attending. You are welcome to stay. It's not going to take much longer because we only have one final item of business, but also you are perfectly free to leave as well. So agenda item 6 is the final agenda item, and Lucy's going to introduce this in a moment. Just to explain, the reason why this is a particularly short meeting is because it only has, apart from public forum, it only has one real agenda item, and that is to approve the work programme for the following year for the scrutiny committees. It is not set in stone, I should hasten to add, because it has to adapt, as was mentioned earlier, to the Mayor's Forward Plan, but also to other items that may come up during the course of the municipal year. So with that, I'm just going to quickly hand over to Lucy.
Yes, afternoon all. So just to let everybody know that members have met this morning. They spent a few hours in a workshop going through a long list of topics and planning their work programme for 24-25. It's just been published on our website, literally 9 minutes ago, but it's for those in the room, it's also up on the screen there. So just to give you a flavour of the sorts of things that it includes. So it's got a broad range of topics on there, and as you will see from the work programme, they're divided up into those that go to public meetings, like this one, so formal reports. There's also some sort of inquiry day, task group type policy development activities, and there's also a selection of member briefings as well. So just to comment on timing, so what we've put on the moment is just an indicative month for those topics to go to the scrutiny commissions. But now we know what the topics are, we can actually work with officers and schedule those meetings. So as soon as we know when each of those commission meetings are likely to take place, we will of course put the details up on the website. So there we are. So that was it from me, Chair, if you're happy to.
Okay, thank you. And also, as Lucy implied, there may be some items not on there yet, simply because we do not yet know when it's going to be possible to put them into the programme, because when we scrutinise something, we need to be sure we have something that's worth scrutinising. And also, as Katie has mentioned, there's also another report that's going to be coming to OSM, which has clear implications for climate change and tackling the climate change emergency. So all I'm going to do now is to ask members of OSM to approve the work programme as it stands for the municipal year. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, we have been working on this morning, and it is a very new document, but looking through it as quickly as I've been able to since it was published. Is it possible to give any assurance that these topics that have been raised in public forum will be included or added as and when possible into the work programme? I know we're going to receive the report of the Climate Change Working Group, and there is some work on procurement coming, but I'd like to know that we can kind of say we'll do what we can to do that.
Yep, but to talk about the climate change working group report in particular, we will consider that report when it comes to the meeting. Katie has put it in a public forum today. 2 ways around this that is coming to that meeting, and that's when we will discuss the recommendations from that report. Jeff, did you want to say something?
Well, I just felt we ought to be saying something about the public forum statements in terms of the advertising policy. And it seemed to me that perhaps there's an element of misunderstanding as well, because I'm not sure that it's for Osm to say we want to consider the advertising. We can consider it and we can express views. But the last time we considered it was because the administration was developing a policy and wanted our opinion. So I don't, we heard some very powerful arguments, but I don't think we should just ignore the arguments, and we should at some stage discuss, and if we share that view, then we should be asking the administration to bring it forward. But just considering it in its own right is not the answer and would mean nothing, because we don't have the power to make it happen. So that was the first point. The other points I wanted to make, relating particularly to the Osm work programme, I have a concern about the Bristol waste situation, and I think that we should be considering Bristol waste and service issues at the soonest possible time, not waiting for the situation to potentially deteriorate. I know that Bristol Beacon is on the work programme, but I think we should be aware that that is another issue that will require attention, and that both of those I think are of such significance to the authority and to the public perception of what we as an authority do, that Scrutiny should be making sure that they are receiving suitable priority. And I don't feel, as presented, the work programme quite does them justice.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And noted. Don't know if Stephen, if you wanted to add in.
I mean, this is a programme for members. So if members decide they want to scrutinise waste and the Bristol Beacon, they're free to do so. I mean, obviously, we've just had a workshop. This was the product of the members' considered view. So it's obviously still wet ink-wise. It's only literally just been published and the meeting had finished an hour ago. So if you want to reconsider what you want to approve as a work plan, the only thing is you'll have to then reapprove it. So I think today was about approving a work programme.
Yes, so my point is that those were Osm items which we haven't discussed this morning, and particularly Bristol Waste, and based largely on what I read in the media, because I don't know what is happening currently. I think the situation is serious enough that we should be considering what that means for service delivery, and that logically follows on from the issues we raised when we looked at the business plan only a few months ago, because there were things there that were giving us a great deal of cause for concern, and the media reports would suggest that those causes for concern were justified. And I would rather that we were pursuing those in advance of the situation deteriorating, if we conceivably can.
I think my response to that as Osm Chair is that of all the commissions, Osm is the one that has to be most responsive and adaptable to events as they happen. So Bristol Beacon is an example of that, Bristol Waste is another example of that, and once we've had an opportunity to look a bit more closely at what the situation is, I am sure Bristol Waste will appear on that work programme, as will other items, as we become clearer about the best way to address them, which also could very well include the low carbon advertising policy. I will go back to the other point as well, is that at present scrutiny in all its format is not a decision-making body. We can only make recommendations and look at the decisions that are being made by the council, which is driven by the executive. So what I would also say is you probably also need to put as much pressure on the executive, so whether mostly via cabinet, I would imagine, and put statements into cabinet to also make sure that they are aware that there is this urgent need to look at low carbon advertising as part of the overall approach to how we tackle climate change. Because otherwise we could end up scrutinising nothing. So we need, if that makes sense, we need to have something to scrutinise in order to make recommendations. Okay, with those comments in mind, is OSM happy to approve the work programme subject, as always, to events that may happen during the course of the year? All those in favour say aye. Thank you very much. And that concludes what has been a very busy year, not just for OSM, but for all the scrutiny commissions and also officers and cabinet members. And I would like to send my thanks and appreciation to them, and also, as always, to members of the public who do come along and contribute to these meetings, because they're very boring if we have nobody in the public gallery. Thank you all very much.